Hello, everyone. As usual, I'm going to give it a few minutes, see if anyone else shows up before we start. Hope everyone's having a good Wednesday. Hey, Werner. Hey, Toledo. Hey, Adam. Hey, Jean. Some new faces, some familiar faces. Hope everyone's doing well. Actually, it's like it's like 65 degrees here today, weirdly enough. Tomorrow it's gonna be cold. Hey, Yor. JK, Randy. How's it going, everyone? Hey, Levi. I think it's probably colder in Minnesota today than it is. Actually, it was colder in Florida yesterday than it was here, so. Hopefully the music isn't too loud. I keep trying to get this right, but I still don't think I've honed it in exactly where I want it to be. So today, I don't really necessarily have a specific photo I'm going to work on. Well, we might find one. But there's a few photos from this trip that's almost from like 3 years ago that I still think have potential. And I kind of want to work on some of those. I've gone through and edited a lot of the photos from this trip, but okay. There's a few other photos that I think have more potential. Hopefully everything is set right. Hey, welcome, Donald. All right. Let's see. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. If you're here for my live stream, about 2 hours in, I forgot to switch it back as I talked about a photo for about 4 minutes. And I lost like 20 viewers as I talked about a photo that wasn't on the screen, so. Hey, Thomas, how's it going? Man, very active chat today. Feel free to ask questions at any time. We're just hanging out, talking about photography, talking about gear, talking about photos, talking about techniques, anything you guys want to talk about. It's kind of the whole point. I actually think at some point I might start a Discord channel or maybe a Facebook page. I'm leaning more towards Discord because it's less social media based and more content based, where people can just join up and get critique on their photos, post their photos, talk back and forth. I think that would be really helpful, but I'm not necessarily sure how I'm going to do it yet. But I think it'd be really cool. It would be something similar to live streams, but obviously anyone can participate at any time, and kind of create like a little community of landscape photography stuff. Chris, it's probably just the person. I actually don't think it's the camera or the editing. I can save a photo in editing. I can enhance a photo in editing. But there's some photos I don't even have to touch. I think reality-wise, consistency is the most important thing. Binro Polaris. Well, I know Binro, but I don't know what that is. Well, Eddie, I shoot all my vlogs on a X-T4, which is mirrorless, if that helps. And I've had my 5D Mark IV for like 4 years, I guess. But I have never felt like, even to this day, I don't look at other pictures and think, oh, I wish I had that camera, because I feel like my camera's holding me back. So as of right now, I have no plans to change. I do think that when I do change, it will very likely be some type of mirrorless camera. I don't know what brand yet. I mean, a lot of my lenses are all Canon. But the problem is if I do change to mirrorless, I have to change the lens anyways, unless I want to adapt them. So what I'll likely do is make that decision when it comes to that. But reality is I don't care about gear all that much. I would personally pick a camera that I can adjust the settings on without having to look at. Like, so I'm filming on my 5D Mark IV right now. That's what's I'm using as a webcam. And I'm so familiar with it that I can change the settings. Like, I can reach behind the camera and change all the settings. And I know where all the buttons are without having to even see them or anything like that. And that's the kind of thing that I take, like, that's more important to me than more megapixels, better dynamic range, stuff like that, as of right now. Do I take pictures in the rain? I take pictures in the snow. It doesn't rain here that much. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, to be honest, I don't think the weight difference is all that much. I think between like the 5D Mark IV and the EOS R5, I think there's not a huge weight difference. Now, in terms of the lenses, there's a slight weight difference, but it's not big enough to like have to sell everything I own to buy. So I think when the time comes and I feel like I want to upgrade my camera, I'll care more about it then. But to this day, still taking photos now, I still don't feel like I'm lacking what I need out of the camera that I have. This is just my own photos, 𝐒𝐻𝑗. User submitted photos was Monday, which was a great stream. A little long. I almost lost my voice. So this one is not going to be as long. And I think I need to figure out what I want to do in terms of like how I want to proceed in the future with those user submitted streams, just because it genuinely feels like I feel bad if I can't get to everyone's photo, but I think I just have to reach a point where that is just going to be the case. I think the new Sony A1 is, I mean, it's cool. It's $6,500 and has a lot of features that I could care less about. In terms of, like, for example, the high frame rate literally doesn't matter to me. I'm never going to record in 8K. 4K file handling already is enough, depending on the megabits per second. I already have to proxy those files, and I have no use for 8K. I mean, I still film all my headshot stuff on 1080p and just upscale it to 4K, and I don't think anyone can tell. So, I mean, it's a cool camera, but if I were to buy a camera right now, and I was comparing, for example, the R5, Canon R5 to the A1, I'd buy the R5 every day. It's literally half the price, and pretty much does the same stuff. Now, if we were talking about the A7R4, I think that's more relevant in the conversation. Thank you, Roberto. You're insane for getting on here while you're going back to New York. Yeah, Adam, I thought about that, but the problem with that is I really want to prioritize the people that are actually here for the live stream. that's mostly why I haven't like pre-chosen the photos. The music should be piano, but if it's Christmas, that's a problem because I did not put Christmas music on. Is it too loud? It should be really subtle. Okay, let's figure out what photo we want to edit. There's a photo in here that I went through and picked out the other day, which is the reason I made the stream. I think it's this one, and I feel like it's close. Like I've already done the full blending on this photo and everything, but I just don't feel like it's there yet. And I remember looking at it and thinking I need to redo it. Yeah, I mean the A1 is, again, stat base is insane. But if I was going to spend $6,000 on a camera, I would probably buy the new Fuji GFX 100S. I want that way more than I would want the A1. Thank you, Roberto. I hope you have a safe flight, man. And if you have internet on there, you know. So, one issue with this particular blend, if you can see it on YouTube, here I'll zoom into like 200%. There's this haloing effect around my mountains here. And I think I just gave up on this image because even after this part, I wasn't totally in love with it. But I think coming back to it, I think it's at least worth giving some more time to it. So really quick, sometimes when I try to decide if a photo is worth editing, so for example, this is the 3 exposures I think I used. Let me make sure, 260. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's these 3 exposures. And you can tell I removed this little stick here and probably removed some other stuff in the background. I must have edited this over a year ago, but I never did anything past it because I just wasn't totally in love with it. But in terms of my process, one thing that I do before I actually do like a full blend sometimes is I'll turn a photo to HDR, meaning I just select the 3 exposures that I have and enable and merge to HDR in Lightroom. And that'll give me a really good idea of how the image could look if I blend it together to see that if it's worth my time blending. And I obviously did that, and I blended these together, and I don't think it's, like, I think there's potential here. I think overall the composition isn't great. I think this element on the right is kind of distracting. I think the foreground element needs a little bit more, to be honest. So it's not a perfect image. If I could go back and retake it, I think I would try to find a better foreground. But I think there's a lot of cool elements here in terms of the light and the clouds. But I need to fix this edge. And then basically we're going to open it in Photoshop and see what I did, because I'll be completely honest, I don't necessarily remember everything I did. I might need to start fresh, and that's kind of what we're going to do on the stream. So if you're into that, feel free to stick around, watch me talk about it. Yeah, so this is manually combined. The HDR version doesn't have the same problem that the one I combined has. You can see chroma there. Well, it loaded and it's fine. It doesn't have the same issues. But the one that I blended together myself has some issues. JK, I don't release presets. I mean, I've thought about it because to be completely... Here's the problem with presets for me. Wait, did someone donate? Oh, Eddie, thank you. I must have missed it while I was talking. Thank you for the $5 to Eddie. Thank you. Yeah, you guys, if you want to donate to support the stream, there's a link right down below, but no pressure. Mostly here to just talk about photography and chill. So I don't do presets. I mean, I thought more and more about it because, and to be completely blunt, they would benefit me probably more than the person that's buying them. And that's probably why I don't release presets. They're a way for me to monetize what I'm doing, which is fantastic, right? So that's my biggest thing right now as a YouTube landscape, I don't know, person, is trying to figure out how I want to monetize what I'm doing so that I could pay bills, right? But the problem is I don't necessarily know if presets provide enough value to the people that are buying them. So they're great for me, because they give you something that you can buy to support me and use, but I just don't know if I want to sell them to people because I don't know if I don't use presets. And I'm always a proponent of selling or doing things that I actually use. And it would feel a little weird for me to make presets and sell them to people, even though I don't use them myself. Now, I could make a few presets of things that I do typically, and the more I'm editing recently, I might do that. I just don't feel comfortable selling things, because I think presets are great for like wedding photography, especially when you're trying to apply a style to all of the images, right? So like, let's say you have a look. But for landscape photography specifically, I just don't think they work very well. And as much as they would benefit me to obviously help myself make money, I just don't think they provide enough value to people that are shooting landscape photos. And I would rather show you how to make your own presets, how to do things that are in presets, than actually selling them. Now, the one caveat is I've been thinking about making presets that are for like radial filter or brush types. And that might be something that's worth it, because instead of having a preset that just you hit a button and hope that it makes your photo look great, I make a preset that gives you different brush selections, radial filter selections, stuff like that. I think that actually might be more beneficial, and it's something that I would actually use in my own workflow that I think I'm going to create coming soon for myself, and figure out which ones I use the most, and then maybe sell those instead. I hope that answers your question. Genuinely, I just don't think that like presets to images are worth, especially for landscape photography specifically. They're just not worth it. So I wouldn't want to sell something that I don't genuinely feel that's worth it. Now, if I can come up with a way to make presets that actually work for landscape photos, where I would use them, or I would apply them, or they would actually benefit me as a editor and benefit viewers, then I would do it. Is it really Deck the Halls? Oh, it is. So what I normally do for music is I'm using Epidemic Sound for all the music for my YouTube. So I'll just try to find an artist that's kind of like super mellow, and I just click on their name and hit play all. But you're totally right that the last 3 songs are Christmas songs. And I can't hear it very loud because I don't play it loud enough for me to hear. Let me turn it up a little bit so I can actually hear what's going on. Sorry about that. My bad, guys. I don't have it up on the window, so. Okay, let's take this into Photoshop and see what I did. And if what I did sucks, then I'll probably restart this. So, let me get Photoshop open. And make sure it's all scaled correctly, because I haven't opened it in a couple days, I think. But yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm still flip-flopping on the idea of presets, but I really genuinely think that I would have to come up with something that's actually useful, that I would use in my daily routine for people to buy. All right. And again, if the music is too loud, like in comparison to my voice, please let me know. I'm watching my levels. It should be fine. I have the music set to like minus 26 dB, which is pretty high. So, okay. Got Photoshop open. And it looks like it's scaled correctly, I think. So let's get back in. Simon, I use Photoshop. It really depends. If I need to remove an object, I'll use Photoshop. If I need to blend photos together, like using luminosity painting and stuff like that, Photoshop. Usually portfolio quality images, I will take into Photoshop for at least one thing. There are obviously, like the photo that I did in one of my recent videos that's called like Dance in the Desert, I didn't need to take into Photoshop. It was fine just in Lightroom. But pretty often, if it's portfolio worthy, I'll take it into Photoshop. Hey Ricardo, thank you for joining. Okay. So this is what I have. So what did I do? We're going back in time here. Oh, Brandon, thank you for the donation. I don't know if I've seen you in chat, Brandon, but thank you. Thank you for the $10. That will pay for lunch. Thank you. All right, so apparently I destructive edited this because I only have the one layer that's blended clearly. So I did not save the non-blended layers. So that means I think we have to start fresh because I'm pretty sure the blend is where this messes up right here. Although it looks fine here, so I wonder what happened when I added this curves layer. No, I think it's wrong. I think there's something going on right there. So I think we have to start over because I was dumb and destructive edited this so that I just combined all the layers together. I don't know why. Okay, let's start over. Hopefully I have enough time to edit this whole photo on stream. I guess we'll see. So close that out. And start over. Let me get these open in Photoshop and then I'll try to catch up on chat. So I'm going to make sure that all of these are kind of where I want them to be. I actually think I probably only need this dark exposure and this exposure, but I'm going to bring them all in because I think I like the flow of the water in this one the most anyways. So let's make sure I have everything set right before I take it in. I think everything should be good. Now you can see that I have Adobe Standard here selected, and I've talked about this in my last streams or my other videos, is that these photos were taken and edited before Lightroom added these color profiles. So I'm actually going to enable Adobe Landscape and then probably tick down my blue saturation here because they kind of do very similar things. So I'm probably going to leave it like that. Let's see what it looks like on the normal exposure. And everything that I'm doing here is to just take it into my pre-edit into Photoshop. Apparently I bumped up the dehaze a lot before I took it in. That's interesting. Okay. Let's bring this back down. Okay. Now I could have just copied these settings. Why do I have dehaze so much on this particular one? Let's just leave that like that. And then I think I want to bring down the exposure just a tad. That's good. Let's see. Make sure everything looks good. Bring this back down to about 30. And then I need to make sure I do the sharpening thing on all of them. Again, I could have just copied these settings over. I'm being lazy by creating more work for myself, if that makes any sense. Okay. These are ready to go into Photoshop. So let's do that. Select them, edit, open as layers in Photoshop. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, let me catch up on chat. Favorite feature of latest Lightroom Classic? The zoom feature by holding shift, definitely. Hey, Patrick, thank you. Thank you for the support, man. Much appreciated. Hey, Matt. I saw you just donated. Thank you, Matt. If you're in the chat, thank you. Feel free to ask questions. Enjoy. Thank you for the donation. Ihor, I've done that on. I think you've been around when I've done it, but I do that with other images sometimes. The only problem is this image, the dynamic range is too far. So the sky looks great in this image, but if I bring up the shadows, there's definitely some noise here. And specifically, I like the water flow That's the wrong image. I like the water, the flow in the water here on the long exposure better. So I definitely want to use that. And there's just not enough detail here. So if I bring down the highlights or the exposure, all of this is still completely blown out. So I don't have a whole lot of choice for this particular image. Okay, so we're going to start with, and it's if I focus on this image a lot, it's going to be hard for me to keep up with chat. So if you guys ask questions and stuff, I'll try to take little breaks here and there. But usually an edit like this takes a decent amount of time. So sometimes I'll use the dark image as my base exposure and then add light to it. Other times I will use this exposure and then blend the sky with it. That's probably what I'm going to do here because mostly everything here looks good aside from the sky. So the first thing I'm going to do is select all my images. Nope, that's not it. Auto align layers and let it do its work. Okay. And then I'm going to check that one spot that we had problems with last time. And it looks like there's a little bit of shifting. There's definitely shifting on the bottom image. But thankfully the bottom images are bright exposure. And I think the only thing I'll be using the bright exposure for is this water. And that shift is not going to be a big deal because it's all blurred anyways. Most important thing is these mountain ridges. And again, this is the kind of editing that is pretty pointless for if you're just posting to Instagram. So this is the edit I did originally. No one's ever going to see that mountain ridge problem that I'm talking about that's up here on Instagram. But I don't do photography and I don't do editing for just Instagram on a photo like this. There are some photos that I'm just like, here's a quick edit. This is good enough to post to Instagram. But this particular photo I want to spend more time on in case I ever print it. Do I think this is an image that I would print? I don't think so. I don't think this is portfolio worthy. Again, mostly because my foreground isn't good enough, but maybe we can get it there. It has enough elements that maybe it would go on my website, but hi, welcome. So, like I said, biggest thing is I want to make sure that these two align. And it looks like they're pretty close, but it will be difficult. So what I'm going to do, we're going to come up here to our luminosity mask, and the first thing I'm going to do is try to find which one gives us the best blend. And I have to be careful with these little patches of snow. So that is what I have to be the most cautious about. I'm just going to go through these and see which one gives me the best separation. That one's too light. I'm thinking it's probably 2 and then modify it to be a tiny bit more. Because realistically, I'm just looking at the edges here and I want to blend those together, and then I can blend the sky in with just a brush without any luminosity mask. I got to be careful here too. So all right, we've made our selection. I'm going to come in here, not with a brush that large, and we're just going to start painting with black at 100% opacity. And I'm going to come back in and do the sky fully in a second. But I want to try to get the edge here correct. That's going to be the hardest part of the blend. And definitely the most difficult to get looking correct, because you can already tell there's some weird stuff going on here. So I'm just going to make sure that that's all added in, and then we're going to go back through it slowly and work on this blend together. Now I don't know how much this is also going to cause problems because these trees are going to have the same issue. So I'm just going to blend it in, and we're going to go back through it and then adjust things correctly. Some of this is going to take some massaging. It's not going to be super easy. Some of it I might have to redo. That's kind of what happens on a blend like this that has foliage and trees and stuff like that. I'll have to come through and blend that part in myself. Okay, we're going to start up here. And then I'll do the rest of the sky. Well, let's just do it now in case. So we're going to go back, turn off our mask, do this mask here so we can just get the sky, the top of the sky in completely. And then I'm just going to disable the selection and make sure I get everything here. Okay. And turn the mask back off. Go through, make our selection. I'm going to use 3 here, I think. Looks like a pretty solid selection. Make the selection, and then we're just going to go through this ridgeline. I'm going to take a break. Second. Oh. Have a good one, Eeyore. Okay. So I'm going to make sure. So I'm going to turn this mask on and off, and I have a shortcut for that I created. And if you want to know how to create that shortcut, it's in my video on, I want to say it's on the focus stacking video. But I just made a shortcut so that I can turn the mask on and off so I could see what it looks like below and what it looks like above. And you can see that I accidentally added some brush strokes here. You should probably be able to see on YouTube, I think. But I'm just going to go in and make sure that those aren't selected. And just, like I said, give some fine tuning to that edge. And now I have to worry about, so what does this look like underneath? So I don't think this edge looks too bad here. I think it looks okay so far. And the problem you're going to run into with this kind of stuff is sometimes you won't notice it until you start adding sharpness back in, or you start going through and adding more contrast, and that edge is really going to start to pop out like it did before. Also, I'm not using any Wacom tablet right now. I'm just using my mouse. If I feel like I need some pressure sensitivity stuff, I'll switch to it. But right now, my edge is still looking pretty good. Our selection did a pretty good job. Still looking good. I don't mind having the darker version of the rocks up there. Still looking good here. And overall, it looks like our blend there is better than it was on the one we started with earlier. We might have some problem here. There's a tiny white line right here. That could give us some issues, but we'll see. Hey, Gregory. Doing all right? Now this part I could definitely see some issues. So let's see, what does it look like down below? Okay. So we might have to come back. Overall, it's fine aside from this one little spot right here. So I'm going to zoom in pretty close and try to just clean up the tree just a little bit. Just ever so slightly. Okay. So something else I might have to do is once I actually combine the blends together, I might have to come in here with the healing brush and fix some of these lines using some either healing brush or stamp brush between the sky and the edge of the mountain here. All of this is looking pretty good though so far in terms of our blend. It did a pretty good job of selecting the ridges and stuff like that. Okay, so this is the part where it's going to get a little tough. And you can see some of the trees and stuff that were added in. If I turn off the mask, all of this was super bright. So this part is going to be a little harder to do. So what I'm going to have to do, select a brush. Yeah, I might have to stamp out some trees, but realistically the trees aren't the problem. And it might be very hard to see on YouTube because of the compression. But there's just these little haloing effects of like red light. It almost looks like chromatic aberration, which looks fine on this particular version. But as soon as I go to add sharpness or contrast back in, they'll show up really heavily. So, okay, let's fix this issue that's going on down here. I have to undo I deselected my mask, and we have to decide what version we want. So obviously, I think we want the dark version. So I'm turning the mask off. This is the bright image without the mask on, and then this is the image below it. And I'm wondering if maybe just that bright version is fine. I think it might be okay. Let's take a look with the mask on. No, I think it's going to have to be darker. Because if I brighten this up, it's just going to look ridiculous. So I think we have to go with the dark version. But the problem is... yeah, this is where the difficulty comes in. Is that I'm going to darken up the trees too much. Because I like the detail in this tree here. So I think what I'm going to try to do is just... let's turn that off. Let's make a slightly lighter selection here. Something like this will probably be good. And then we're going to paint in a little bit of that mountain. Try to get it to look not so hazy, pretty much. But I'm trying not to affect this tree right here. And it's just going to require a little bit of playing around. I think this looks pretty good. The issue is there's some fog here. I don't want to remove that by using the wrong exposure. But I also have to make sure that this blend between this part of the range in the background blends correctly with the tree in the foreground here. I think that looks okay. Let's see if we can get in here and fix some of the issues around these trees. I don't think it's going to be perfect. I pretty much just want to use the dark version in the background. So I think that's what we're going to do. And then try to blend a little bit together there. So I'm just blending basically where all the trees are in front of the sky. I'm worried about those spots because those are the spots that are going to have that. Because I'm basically what the issue is I'm trying to take this really bright version of the tree and blend it with this really dark version of the tree. And you have to find a middle ground to make it look right. And you can already tell what's happening is that this whole dark part that I've blended in looks a little weird, but we're a little lucky because this fog here kind of makes it look natural, where the dark area and the fog hits. It actually looks okay, I think, so far. It's not going to be perfect, but I just want to get rid of a lot of that fringing that's on the trees there. And it's basically where the brightest parts of the image meet the darkest parts of what I'm trying to blend together. And I'll come back through and probably touch this up a little bit. So if I come back through and just... I'll do that in a second. Let's make sure we have everything where we want it. And we'll come back through and do that. I think this is pretty close overall. Let's take a look at the dark. I think that's looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is come back, and this is where I'd probably switch to a pressure sensitive brush, but I'm going to be lazy and just drop my opacity down a little bit. And I'm going to kind of come in here and add a little bit of fog almost back to some of the trees here to kind of get them to blend a little bit better on the line here. By line, I mean where it goes from sky to foreground trees. Let's take a look. I think this is looking okay. Let's bring some of this back in right here. And I think that fog is actually helping us out a lot because it makes it look like the layer of fog is causing brightness and contrast to the trees. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, Eddie, that's basically what I'm doing. I painted it in first to just get everything that I want in. And then I'm going back through and taking out the stuff to kind of blend a more natural blend back together, if that makes sense. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. It's a tedious process, but that's kind of what happens when you're trying to do a blend like this. And to be completely honest, the people that you see on maybe Instagram that have like really insane blends, really like Nick Page, Ted Gore, those kind of people, Ryan DR, this is the kind of blends they do. It's just, it can take a lot of time. So I'm noticing a little bit of haloing right there. I'm just going to come back through, make sure that's dark enough. I think overall this is good. I think the blend that we just did looks pretty natural. The fog between the two looks good. So what I'll do is I'll turn off this top layer, look at my dark layer. I'll turn on my lighter layer, turn off the mask so all I can see is the bright layer. And I think overall that's looking pretty good. Maybe this one tree right here is a little bit too dark. So let's go in and brighten that up a smidge. And I'm just kind of painting in a little bit of light back in to where it might look a little bit too dark. And that's really what's happening. But I think overall that looks much better than before. Yeah. Okay. That was a little easier than I expected for that part. I think that fog right there really helped the transition between the dark trees and the brighter trees in terms of between these two exposures. Okay, so now we're going to go through and go back to looking at our line right here, and I could definitely see more of a red line here. Oh, and I can definitely see we lost some tones when I did my big brush strokes. So we need to bring those back in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn off the mask, go back to my bright selection here. I think it was something like this. Yep, that looks about right. And we're just going to work on making sure, first of all, let's bring our opacity back to 100, making sure that every detail in this rock is correct. So let's bring all those tones back in. They kind of got painted out. We can check by pressing the button that's above your enter key, which is backslash. Just going to bring those back in, and then I have to really adjust. I'll have to go on this ridge and get really specific about that. You can tell I just made a halo right there, but I'm going to go back in and fix that as we go up the ridge. I just want to make sure I have all of the correct tones in this mountainside here. Okay, so now that those are mostly back, let's take a look. Yeah, that's good. We'll go through, turn off the mask again, select a different mask. Hopefully we can get a better separation of black and white here. That looks pretty good. We can make it even better. This looks good. Select that, make our brush a little smaller. And then I'm just gonna follow this ridge and hopefully paint in. Now I can easily see, and I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see that red line that's right there. And that might be something we have to fix after the exposure blend. So if you're just joining in, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me talk about photography. If you guys want to feel free to chat, ask questions, anything. I'll take some breaks and answer anything you want to ask. I'm definitely noticing a line there though. Well, I guess it's almost there in the dark photo, so maybe that's not the worst. Just painting in this line, getting it to look correct. It looks pretty good all the way up to here. That's looking pretty good. Let's bring some of that back in. And I'm using X to shift my white and black over here. You'll notice it move. So I'm doing a lot of stuff you'll probably not be able to tell what I'm doing. Oh, singing. That's not what I want. Okay. Hopefully that's no singing. All right. Back to the edit. Okay. So just going along the ridge line here, making sure that this is blended correctly. It looks pretty good. The blend actually looks fantastic up here. I don't see anything wrong with these areas, especially the trees. Got pretty lucky there. There's maybe a little bit here. Yeah, there's like one little spot here. Let's paint this back in. That I can definitely tell some muddiness right there. And the reason those little snow parts got hit when I did my big brush strokes earlier is because they're white. So they included themselves a little bit in the luminosity mask that I selected. And that's why I have to go back in and fix that. But overall, that's a pretty solid blend These little ridge lines will probably show up when I add contrast and stuff, so I might have to be careful there. Let's deselect and just, nope, that's not what I want. That's not what I want either. I need to make sure that this tiny little spot looks okay. Let's go back to having our selection. See if I can fix that. That's better. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay. So, I think the one problem we're going to have is this little line right here might not be blended correctly. I might have to fix that with a brush. But I think overall our blend is looking pretty good between these two layers. Yeah, looking pretty good. I'm going to go grab a drink really quick. I'll be back in like 30 seconds. So if you're just joining, don't leave. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. If it's not obvious. Okay. So, I think this edge is something I'll worry about at the end. One thing I will likely do, well, this is what I do, is I'm going to keep editing the photo. We'll take it back into Lightroom. We'll add some contrast and stuff back into it. And if I really start to notice that edge, once I do that, by adding the contrast back in, what I'll do is I'll come back into Photoshop and edit the TIFF file one more time. This was shot in March. It actually snowed the day after. So this was the 13th. This is 2018. And this was the 14th. Snowed the day after. Beautiful snow too. Some more photos in here I might want to touch, but this was the main one I wanted to get to because I knew it was going to be pretty involved. All right, let's see. Alex, thank you for the compliment. I hope it's not so relaxing that people fall asleep, but it is what it is. I guess if that's what people want to watch. Okay, so as I was saying, what I would likely do is continue to edit this, take it into Lightroom, and if that edge that I notice here really starts to pop out too much, I'll bring it back into Photoshop and try to fix that edge. So the next thing I want to do is blend this part of the water in because I really like that. Actually, let's make sure that there's no other darker parts I want to blend in. So I think everything here looks pretty good in terms of light values. And I think that looks pretty good. Maybe this area needs to be a little darker. Even though this is fog. No, I'll probably leave it. The plugin is Tony Kuiper's Action Panel 7 or something like that. Tony Kuiper. Here, I'll just put a link to it. You can pretty much use whatever luminosity mask thing you want, like Lumenzia, Ray, or Pro. I think it's TK Action Panel 7, something like that. Here, I'll post a link. But feel free to use whatever you want. I mean, I don't use a lot of the features in here. I really just want the luminosity mask, maybe a color mask sometimes. So, okay. So what's next on this image? I think I want the water flow here. So I'm just going to group these together and create a mask and try to find brighter parts of the image. This might work. Let's see. Bigger mask here. Paint with black. Problem is I want to make sure we get all the right tones. What I may do is actually just blend out the entire bottom besides this bright part, because I really like the water flow better in our longer exposure. I'm just comparing the two really quick and seeing what I would miss if I like some of the texture. Maybe I just want the water flow part. Let's just see what happens if I just keep blending this together a little bit. I think it's going to look a little too blurry using this mask, but we'll take a look. So mask off, mask on, mask off. And I think it looks okay. I really just want some of those blurry parts right there. Kind of give that movement, but I kind of like the texture of the water back here. So I didn't want to take the whole part of that image. I really just want to add some movement in the water by taking that slightly longer exposure. I think the nice thing about when you blend water together like this is because a lot of it's already blurry or moving or something like that. The blend doesn't have to be as precise as something like this mountain range with the background. So I think overall, yeah, I think that's really nice. We still have some, well, let's make sure we got everything. It's adding a little bit more movement to the water. I kind of like that. Let's see what other movement we can add. I like the little bit here. And I do have a luminosity mask selected, so it's only doing the bright parts. So some of this I might have to redo a little bit. Let's try to get this little spot here. I think overall it looks pretty good though. Just adding a little bit of that movement back in. I think that looks pretty good. If you're just joining, thank you. We are just blending, luminosity masking, blending, whatever you want to call it. A few images together here. Okay. I think blend-wise, this is pretty good. So I think I have all the information that I want from the images. So this is our bright image. Is there anything else I want from that? Maybe I want a little bit more flow here. We can add that in just really quick. Just a little bit more flow here, a little bit more movement. But I don't think there's any parts that I want from the bright image. Maybe this fog I might want to brighten up. And we can do that really quick. So if I come in here, just get that fog. The only problem is, let's see, are the trees messing it up? Yeah, I feel like this bottom image, the bright image, is a little bit bigger. That's okay. There's plenty of information here. We don't need to use the bright image for that to bring it up. So I think we're looking good there. So the next thing I want to do is remove these distracting little branches and stuff. So I'm just going to create a new layer, deselect my mask that you can't see, and I'm just going to come in here with the spot healing brush and make sure sample all layers is selected. And then we're just going to come in and see what it'll do for us. Sometimes it'll just do it automatically. Sometimes it'll take a little bit more work. Thankfully, again, when it comes to water, you can usually get it looking pretty good with just a few brush strokes, kind of mixing it in. Obviously, we can tell that what we just did is there, but if I zoom out now and zoom back in, that's usually how I tell. And now I'm going to use the stamp tool to just kind of blend in some of the original stuff back in there. And I think overall, we could probably make this a little bit better. Let's make sure our opacity is set to 100. Just kind of adding some of this back in. And again, you don't have to get scientific with it. Like I said, in the water, no one is ever going to be able to tell, as long as it doesn't look too ridiculous. Sometimes I get pretty specific with this, but for the most part, like I said, if anyone was looking at this, they would never... There's one little spot here that I think could be better. So let's see if we can fix that. That looks fine. Doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, hey Michael. Thanks for joining, man. And anytime. I think the last time I commented on your video was about you wearing a, what was it? An In-N-Out shirt, and it made me want In-N-Out. All right, so we're going to come in here and continue to just remove a couple of these branches. Some of you might be wondering if that's cheating. My opinion is that as long as I'm honest about my photo, that it's not cheating. It's pretty much my artistic expression. Allowed to do whatever you want to your photo, whatever makes you happy, as long as you're not deceiving people. So if someone asked what I did to this, I would just tell them I removed some distracting elements in the water. And you can tell right there that the spot healing brush pretty much made that perfect without me needing to do anything else. So I'm going to keep going through, just removing a few of these elements. This one might be a little bit harder just because of the moving water. You can see that it kind of leaves a faint look of what was there. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to go through, just keep spot healing brush. Like I said, it's pretty easy when there is moving water, and now you can't really tell. Hey man, thank you. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram or just message me. Well, I guess you can't message me. Why can't you message people on YouTube yet? That seems weird to me, but feel free to just message me on Instagram. Be glad to help. All right, that looks pretty good. This one is going to be a little harder. And the reason that is because it's a pretty sharp tree. So if we compare it to the last tree, little branch. Oh, no, not singing again. Okay, we're going to find a different artist. Feel free to ask some questions right now while I look for different music. Let's see. I really wish I could just play whatever music I wanted on here. But because of how stringent they've gotten on copyright stuff, it's been much harder. Let's see. What does this person sound like? They only have a few songs. Okay, this should work. Yeah, anytime, Michael. Just message me. Okay, so as I was saying, this branch was super easy to remove just because it's already pretty blurry, and the spot healing brush is going to take care of that a lot easier. You can kind of tell there's like remnants of it. I might go back through and fix that, but overall I don't think anyone would know unless obviously you're watching my stream and you know I just removed it. This one might be a little bit more difficult, so I'm going to do it in parts. I'm going to try to handle this super contrasty part up here first. And normally the way I do this is not very, I'll be honest and say it's not very scientific. I'm just going to go through and try to remove parts and see what it does. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to fix parts using the stamp brush and see where I can get using the stamp brush and a mixture of the stamp brush and the spot healing brush. So I'm actually going back and forth. Stamp brush is just S, spot healing brush is just J on your keyboard. And I'm just going back and forth and using those to see what they do. And sometimes it just takes a little playing around, especially when you're using content aware. That doesn't look bad in my opinion. That looks fine. It's doing a pretty good job. Looks fine. And you can see how easy this can be. Let's see. So if you're just joining, thanks guys. Welcome. We're just blending together, painting out some stuff in an image, fixing some stuff up. We're not really working on like necessarily a portfolio worthy image, but still one that I wanted to try and work on the stream, just because I think it shows a lot of elements of what it takes to make a pretty deep edit. I think that looks pretty good. Let's zoom out a little bit. Yeah. I think there's a little bit of moneyness here. Let's see if we can clean that up really quick. Whoops. Yeah, like I said, sometimes it just takes a little massaging between the stamp brush, spot healing brush. I don't like the way that looks. But for the most part, I don't think anyone would ever look at this and think that there was something there, and that's what's important to me. And again, I mean, I might be zoomed into 200% or something like that here, which doesn't really matter for something like Instagram, but it's really going to matter for print, stuff like that. When did I get into photography? I got into photography in 2009, but that's a little deceiving because that just means when I bought my camera, I wasn't really taking it seriously. I shot some live musicians, some bands and stuff like that from 2012 to 2014, here and there. Mostly filming bands more than it was photographing bands. But I definitely took some photos, dabbled in a lot of genres of photography. And as I'm talking here, I'm just looking through the image of what else I might want to remove. And then it wasn't until 2016 that I focused specifically on landscape photography. And ever since then, that is pretty much all I've shot. It's what I always enjoyed the most. Everything else just seemed like I was shooting it with the hopes to either make money or turn it into something to monetize eventually. Whereas landscape photography was always what I did to make myself happy. And that's when I decided, why don't I just focus on what makes me happy and make money elsewhere. Until recently, which is, I'm trying to now, this is in the process of trying to turn that love and passion into something to make money. Not make money, but at least earn a living. I think I should put it better that way. My goal here is not to make money. It's to keep doing landscape photography, but it's to hopefully eventually earn enough to pay bills. Okay, I think this is, hope that answers your question. I think this is looking pretty good in terms of what I want to remove in the foreground. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I think this is looking pretty good overall. Let's take a look one more time at this spot where this little branch was. And nope, I honestly think that this is probably fine. That little streak there. I'm just trying to get rid of that little spot right there. Nope, that looks terrible. And I'm just undoing and redoing, by the way, and seeing what Photoshop gives me. Let's see, can I remove that little spot? Okay, I think that looks much better. How do I set my bar for portfolio worthy image? That's a great question. I'm really specific about what I want to put on my actual website and stuff like that. So let's, I'll use the edit that I did earlier. So you have an idea of what this looked like close to like the final image. This is what we're trying to work towards, just in a better edit. Again, I might be able to get this to a point where it might be portfolio worthy, but I think it generally lacks. Like I would say this is probably, so if a 10 is portfolio worthy for me, I'm not saying it's a 10 on the scale of like photography in general, but let's say a 10 or a 9 is what I would want for my personal photo to be on my portfolio. I think this is close to like a 7. And the reason is, again, the foreground just isn't strong enough. I have these two elements here. So this rock right here and this patch of hay or grass or whatever is a bit too distracting. So it just, if those weren't there and maybe my foreground element was slightly stronger, it could be portfolio worthy. Because I think the clouds and the mountains and stuff like that are close. And again, I think that in the edit, we might be able to get it there. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. But I think when I did this original edit, I didn't think it was strong enough. But we're going through and editing it and trying to get it to that point to where maybe it is a 9 for myself, if that makes sense. So hoping for the same, Patrick, in the sense of doing landscape photography as a job more than just a hobby. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. So I think overall, in terms of removing those elements, that looks pretty good. Now, I think, again, to go back to, can I make this portfolio worthy? I think what I would absolutely need to do is try to remove this patch of hay or grass here. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. But it doesn't hurt to try. So I'm going to try really quick with a giant spot healing brush and see what my computer does. Okay, that looks terrible. So something like this, with something this large, can be very difficult. Honestly, I actually think it would be fine if I could just get rid of the elements over here so that it is by itself rather. Okay, Photoshop. But again, this element might be too hard to just straight up remove. I could probably do it, but it would take a lot of effort. And I don't know if it's worth it. So I actually did that on a shot that I have for New Zealand. I removed a rock that was on the left-hand side of the frame very subtly, but I did because it was so close to being good enough for portfolio for me. Let's try the stamp brush. I think this is going to be too hard to remove. But at least if we start somewhere a little bit better, maybe we can get this looking how we want it. That's not what I want. So what I'm doing is I'm using the stamp brush from up here to paint in this area. You know what? I need to do this on another layer. I don't want to mess up this layer that we have because I'm kind of experimenting here. Yeah, so using the spot healing brush is basically content aware. Oh boy. Okay. All right. That music doesn't work either. So I'm using the spot healing brush, which is content aware. But if I wanted to get very specific, sorry, I'm looking for more music here. See, solo guitar. See if we can find some laid back stuff. It sounds pretty good. I'll just turn it down. So I could use content aware, so I could just lasso tool this. But what I wanted to try to do was give Photoshop a little bit more information on, that's not, Shift F5 is how I brought that menu up and I accidentally hit enter too quickly. I want to give, okay. Well, so if I want to use content aware and sample all the layers, the best way to do it is to create a layer from my whole photo. So I'll do that. We'll remove this. So now I have the whole photo right here of everything we've done. And then I'll use content aware that way. We're going to try this, but again, I think the better approach is probably trying to stamp tool that area and then using content aware to tell Photoshop a little bit more information of what I actually want there. Yeah, that's what content aware did. So sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, so I haven't done the crop yet. I will probably crop some of this bottom part out. Totally. I just don't like this element being so close to the edge of the frame and being cut off. Hey, Eddie, thanks for checking in. Thanks for joining. Thanks for chatting. And thanks for all the support. Thank you for being the first donation. It means a lot. Thank you, man. All right, so let's try to do what I was talking about. And again, I don't think this is going to look great. What I'm about to do might just end up, I might not do it. But sometimes I like to see if I can. And if I can get it to a point where it looks okay, like it looks realistic, then I might go with it. But sometimes I'll do stuff like this and it just doesn't work. And that's okay. But to get it to a spot where I want, and I know this looks pretty bad so far, but that is also okay. I'm trying my best to keep this little rock in here because I think it's cool. But I don't know if it's going to work. So now what we're going to do is take our lasso tool, and now we're going to content aware and see what it gives us. Okay, that looks terrible. Okay, so can we get this looking close to how we want it? And by how we want it, I just mean looking like real enough to be believable. And again, with water, you can get away with a little bit more just because you can have all of these smooth elements, elements that don't necessarily need to blend together perfectly, but I obviously want it to look realistic, and so far it does not look realistic. It's very clear I stamp brushed it. But maybe we can get it to a point. So something else I can do is I can come in here and we have this layer, and then I can blend in our original layer, but only leaving out this little spot that we've picked to try to remove. So that's probably what I will try to do, as long as I have this layer looking better. But again, sometimes this takes some massaging, sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I think overall it's probably not going to work out. Okay, so let's go from here. Let's add a mask and invert the mask, and then paint out just this little bale of hay here and see what we can get using our bottom selection that we made and this, and see if we can just kind of get to a point where it looks natural. Okay, well, I don't think this looks terrible. Let's drop our opacity down a little bit. I think right here looks kind of bad. And it's still a bit too dark, I think. So I'm going to turn my mask off. And I'm going to try to brighten up a bit of this section here. Let's see. Spot healing brush will do it. Close. Okay, it's a little bit better. Still looks a little off. Let's paint in some light from here, just a tad. And again, I'm just massaging this back and forth, trying to get it to look natural, trying to fix some of those spots and that kind of thing. Okay, let's turn our mask back on. I think overall it still just doesn't appear right to me. Maybe if I played with it longer, maybe we could get it there. I think it's close, but I think overall it's still just a bit too busy. And I think I'm probably hurting the image more than I'm helping the image by trying to remove it, trying to force remove it, basically. And that maybe just leaving it there isn't the end of the world. But at least I tried. But I think overall trying to use some of the water from up here and getting it to look correct is close. So something else I could do is I could just completely nix trying to keep this rock here if I wanted to. Let's do that as the last thing to see if we can do it. And then if it doesn't work, we'll move on. All right. That has just not been doing anything, so. I think overall this is not going to work out. I think it just looks too, well, like I photoshopped it out. But we tried. I think that is probably pretty close. So technically, we could leave it like that. I'd probably remove the rock a little bit more. But again, I think, oops, I think I'm hurting the photo more than I'm helping. So I think we're just gonna abandon that. I think that just leaving it in there is probably better. Because if I went to print this, like, sure, this might look fine on, I don't know, social media or something. But if I went to print this, you would be able to tell what was going on. So we're just gonna delete that layer and nix all of that. Levi, there might be. But I'll be honest and say I don't know where that is. Colin, I took this photo 3 years ago. I'll be completely blunt and say I don't remember. I probably could have... honestly, this photo could have been better if I had just taken more time on my foreground composition. I think my composition here is not very great. I think it could be better. Use the new content aware fill. What's the new content aware fill? I was actually possibly going to remove this spot here, Greg, if that's what you were talking about. If I go to edit content aware. Am I blind? I see content aware scale. If I go to edit content aware fill, you can mask out what you want. I don't know. Yeah, when I did the lasso earlier, guys, when I did this and I press Shift F5 and I go to fill content aware, I think that's what you're talking about unless I'm wrong. This is what I did earlier and it didn't work. If that's what you're asking. It should be exact same as what I was doing. So if I do this and then go to edit content aware or whatever you're referring to, I think it's the same thing. Oh, it's not the same. Okay. Do I not have the most updated version of Photoshop? Is that why I don't see it? Okay, I'll try. I see the button now. So you're referring to this? Oh, okay. Okay. See? This is why I stream. Because I don't know about some of this stuff sometimes. So, by the green area... Who said that earlier? I assume this is what you're referring to. Okay, and now, does the green area tell it what to use and what not to use? I think I watched a video on this and then I just forgot how to use it. So, I'm assuming the green area tells what it can use and what it can't use, correct? Ah. Well, this might actually make the photo work. Okay, well, clearly I don't want that part to be used. Thank you, Photoshop. And I probably don't want any of this to be used. Maybe something like this. I can. How do I add? Plus. Could probably use some of this stuff down here. Okay. Is there a way to... Oh, yeah, here we go. Okay, that's not perfect. Let me have a better selection then, now that I know this works. See, all of you guys in chat are way better at this than I am. All right. Sometimes I think there's just new tools that get released And I'll be completely honest and say I don't watch as many videos as I used to. Sometimes I'll watch stuff on new features. I honestly think I did see this, and I just forgot about it. But I think I saw it in a portrait video. Okay. Now that we have a slightly better selection, let's get rid of all this stuff. I wonder how much information it actually needs. Okay, how do I... What is the button to switch from... Okay, I guess I don't know the button, but... Is there... Do you guys know if there's a shortcut button to switch from plus and minus on this? Okay, let's take a look at what we're actually doing here. It's not perfect. There's like a little spot right here that doesn't look great. Let's see what happens if I remove this. Oh, that looks pretty good. Hold shift to switch. Nope. It defaulted to minus for me. Oh, alt. Alt to switch. That's what it is. Well, at least for me. I guess it could be maybe different on a Mac. Okay. Well, now we're getting somewhere. See, you guys are helping me more than I'm helping you. Okay. Yeah, I'll be honest and say I'll put the new layer. Okay. Color, rotation. Oh, I could have sampled all layers using a blank layer. Okay, that's good to know. Cool. So instead of having earlier when I stamped the layer and made a whole new photo with everything that was there, I think I could have done this without having, I could have just selected sample all layers. Rid of more of the rocks. Sure, we can do that. Okay. What does the opacity thing do? Oh, that's just for the green. Okay, I see. I'm going to hit apply and hit OK and then see what happens. Okay, so it created this layer. Huh. Okay. So some problems is that obviously this line here is being copied from this line. And I would need to come in here. Now again, it's not perfect. But maybe we can get it to look right. It still looks too mushy. It still looks like it's still copied from down there. And honestly, this might, if I wanted to continue to do this, I might be able to get it to a spot that looks good. But I don't know if it's worth it. A lot of what it filled in with is very, I don't know. I don't like it. Not that the tool wasn't great. That was much easier to try to figure out where I wanted to copy it from. I just don't think it's going to look right. Yeah, of course. The more data you give it, the better it's going to look. I just think overall, I'd have to really sit here and try to remove this if I wanted to, but I don't think it's worth it. I think it probably just looks better and more natural leaving it. So we're going to go back to where we were. It's awesome that I learned that though. So thank you everyone in the chat for showing me that. Clearly, like I said, sometimes I get set in my ways and I just don't learn new stuff. Okay. What else does this image need? I think overall, we're at a pretty good point in terms of distractions and stuff like that. And we probably want to start painting in some contrast. And get close to finishing the image in Photoshop, I think. So one thing I noticed is that I think this area is a little too bright. So what I can do is I can even go back in to my original blend, but I think what I'm going to do is just use some curves adjustments. Hey, Matt. Thank you again for the donation and thank you for joining in. Thank you. That means a lot, man. Enjoy your day at work. Well, your meeting. as much as you can. So I'm just going to bring my curves down, and I'm going to use this curves layer to kind of paint some contrast into the image. We're going to make quite a few curves adjustments probably. So let's see which mask I want to use. I think this one looks pretty good. Oh, let's deselect that. I want to invert my curves because I want to paint in the areas that I want to affect. Let's go back to our selection, hit the selection thing, come in here. Now this is probably the time I should connect my pen. 1 second. I'm just plugging in my Wacom tablet thing here. Because pressure sensitivity is going to matter for the exposure blending part here, in my opinion. Hopefully everything is good. Okay, so I just want to paint in, let's paint with white. I'm just going to darken up this area right here. And we want to make sure it's not looking too mushy. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just darkening in that area ever so slightly. Not too much though. And the reason I'm darkening this is because it's very likely I'll probably bring up the whites when I take it back into Lightroom ever so slightly if I don't finish the photo in Photoshop. And I want that to be just a tiny bit darker. Not too much darker. Okay, let's turn off our mask and see if there's anything else we really want to darken up. I think the 𝐒𝐤𝐢𝐚𝐥𝐬 over here can probably be just a tiny bit darker. So I'm just going to darken up this part of the image because it's kind of bright for being on that whole side of the image. By side, I mean on the very side of the image. And I'm just gently painting in. I'm going to turn my mask, this layer on and off. And you can kind of see what I'm doing. It's actually darkening the fog more than it's darkening the mountains. So I'm going to undo all of that because I don't like what it's doing. Yeah. And that's because of the range mask that I have selected. If I want to darken that, I need to select a different range mask. Okay, so any other parts I really want to darken all that much? I don't think so. Right now I'm just turning the mask on and off. Maybe the foreground a little bit. So let's do that. I'm actually going to deselect my mask and I'm just going to have a really gentle brush here, 20%. And I'm using pressure sensitivity. And I'm just going to paint in a little bit down here to darken up the foreground. And this is just kind of creating like a natural little vignette down here for just that part. Something else I might want to do is darken up this thing that we tried to remove, but not too much, just a little bit. Just a tiny bit. So it's a little less distracting. And I think overall, this is looking pretty good. I think I want to, again, darken up these elements on this side and this side. And I'm just trying to draw the attention of my viewer's eye right to the middle here. I think overall the whole image could probably be darkened in the sky here. So again, light brush strokes using the Wacom tablet. And you can see the clouds are just getting a little bit darker. And I'm just painting in just a little bit. And then I'm actually going to increase the brightness of some of the areas in the foreground, the middle ground, after we do this layer. So I think that's looking pretty good. If I turn this off and on, you can kind of see we added a little bit of contrast into our image just by darkening a little bit around. So I'm going to create another, that's not the button I wanted, a curves adjustment. And then this one we are going to focus on a little bit of the shadow areas first. And then I'm going to bring up the fog a little bit. And you could do what I'm doing in like 6 different ways. It doesn't have to be a curves adjustment. It could be a levels adjustment. I'm just used to using curves and then basically painting in the adjustments that I want. So, okay, let me check chat really quick. Colin. Colin, just right below where it says donate here to support the stream, if that's what you're referring to. You just click that button and you can donate, but don't feel pressured to. Just hanging out and chatting. It's perfectly fine. Okay, so let's inverse our mask here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off all of these masks so that I can use because the problem is if I turn this mask on and then use my luminosity masks up here, these areas might be a little too dark for my luminance selection. So what I want to do is undo that mask. That's a pretty good selection. And I'm just going to hit select, turn this back on, and we're going to go do the same thing, painting in white. And all I'm going to do is just bring up a little bit of the shadows in the trees here, just so that if I add contrast in Lightroom, I don't lose all of that data when I bring the shadows, when I add the contrast in. So this should only be affecting the trees here, and it's really gentle. So I probably need to actually increase my opacity here because I am using a layer mask and I'm using the tablet. So I have a lot of control over how much I'm actually painting in. And I'm just bringing this up ever so slightly so I can at least get the details out of the trees. But it's very subtle. It's probably even hard to see on YouTube. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. Let's hit a little spot of light right here. And I think that's okay. Okay. And now I'm going to have a completely different selection. I'm going to deselect that luminance mask. I'm going to come in here and I want to brighten up this fog area right here. This selection should be enough. Whoops. I'm going to select that, turn my 2 curves adjustments back on, and then I come in here and just paint in this fog area ever so gently. Subtlety is always most important when you're doing this kind of edits, otherwise the blend will just look too strong. Hey Colin, thank you. Hey, you found it. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Every little bit counts, and it means a lot. Genuinely. All right, so now let's turn this layer off and on, and you can kind of see really what it's doing. I want to make sure that I'm not having a halo effect where I adjusted those trees, but I think it looks okay. And again, I just wanted to bring out a little bit of detail there. The haloing effect is kind of happening because of the fog that's behind those trees, and I'm okay with that. Normally I wouldn't be, but I think it's fine there because again, there's fog behind those trees. Let's keep bringing that fog up just a little bit more. And again, I'm using a luminosity mask, so it's really only selecting that fog as the strongest, and I'm using my pen to adjust pressure sensitivity, which means I get to pick how strong I'm painting that in. And I think that that's looking pretty good. So before and after of just that curves adjustment, we add a little bit of brightness to the details here and over here, so that when I add my final contrast in the image, we'll have some details there. So the next part is, I'm going to turn my mask on and off to see what it would look like for the whole image being brighter. I think I want to add some brightness to the areas down here. So what I'm going to do again is turn off these 2 curves adjustments and go to my mask selection and find a mask selection that looks pretty good for these brightest parts down here. I think that overall 1 is probably going to be slightly better. Let's see if we can adjust it. That's probably too strong. That's probably pretty good. So we're going to go with that. Hit my selection, turn those layers both back on, and then just gently paint in these brighter areas. And it's going to brighten up those little spots that we painted in earlier of where the water is flowing. I think that looks pretty good. A lot of this, as you can tell, is a very subtle thing, but considering this is technically my foreground element in my composition where I want my viewer's eye to start, either here or in the background, it needs to be pretty bright so that it's obvious that that is where the viewer should look. Now, I don't want it to look too bright. I think we're getting pretty close. That's probably max I want there. So, okay. I think that's looking pretty good. All right. All right, so something else I wanted to do is add a little bit of color to those areas. So what I'm going to do is deselect, go back to my mouse just because I work easier with the mouse. I'm going to make a new layer, I'm going to select this color of the clouds up here. Try to find something I like. That looks pretty good. Maybe, yeah. And then I'm just going to fill this entire layer with my foreground color, which is the color we just selected. It's going to fill there, create a mask, invert the mask, and then I'm going to select soft light for the overlay here. And I'm going to go back and select the same mask. This is probably good for the selection. And then all I'm going to do, hey, Levi, thank you, man. Thank you for the donation. Thank you. So now that we have our color selected, we have our mask, and I have the luminance mask, I'm just going to come back in here with my pen tool. And in terms of how heavy I do this, it doesn't really matter because I can adjust the overall opacity of this layer. But what I'm going to do is just paint in some light onto these areas that you can see here. Now, obviously, it looks very strong right now, but that's okay. Because like I said, I will adjust that in a second. That's probably a bit too strong. And I'm just pressing X to go back and forth between black and white here in terms of my selections. So you can see what this is doing, and I'm doing it really heavy-handed so you guys can tell what's happening. But then all I'm going to do is bring the opacity of this layer down by quite a bit. And you can do this either by painting in the opacity that you want or painting in the areas that you want and then just decreasing the opacity overall. And I think in general, this accomplished what I wanted. I just wanted to add just a touch. This is probably still too much. I wanted to add just a touch of light to those areas because they were looking a little bit too white for me, considering the sky is so warm. Sorry, I was blanking. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm actually going to go back through and erase a little bit here because I think it's still too strong in some of the areas I don't want it. But it's very subtle. Just ever so slightly. Yep, that looks pretty good. And I think our image in terms of Photoshop is almost done. I think generally speaking, what I could do is come in here and contrast paint more. I know that I want to darken this area a little bit, and I want to make sure I recover some of the highlights here. But I think a lot of that I can do just in Lightroom. So I'm just going to hit save, check the chat, wait for it to save because it's a pretty big file. I've got 3 images in here with multiple layers of different curves and stuff like that. So it's about 1 gig, 2 gigs. Take some time to save. Yeah, I will. It'll be posted. Thanks, Eric. Hope you're doing well. This warm weather we're having in Colorado. I know you're a little further south than me, but it's probably exactly the same. Okay. All of my files that I'm working on are on an external hard drive. Typically that save would go a lot faster if I move this to my solid state drive. Oh, you're north of me. Sorry. Okay. Oh, something else I should do before I bring this into Lightroom is just crop this out. So one other thing we could actually talk about before we finalize the save in Photoshop is making sure that I don't want to move anything around. And what I mean by that is just slightly warp something to kind of get it either more in the frame or not. I think overall it's fine. I still think that this area in the middle is probably too bright. It's very distracting, even though it kind of leads your eye to this area. But I think that part to me is, I wish it wasn't as bright. However, if I darken it, like let's say we just use this, this is going to look weird since there's a mask on this layer. But if I were to darken it and just have this, it just wouldn't look correct in terms of the balance of the whole image. So I think overall, I'm just going to crop it and be done. I don't think I'm going to move anything around. And by be done, I mean in Photoshop, not necessarily done with the image. And I'm not fully cropping it because I like to leave as much as possible before I take it into Lightroom so that I can crop it in Lightroom if I want to. Let's see. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. Let's see if I got everything. Yeah, okay. Nope. There's still... Oh no, it's gone. Okay. Let's make sure this is the right. Yeah, I think we're good. Okay. Time save. Thank you, Levi. Support means the world. Seriously. I really appreciate it. And once that saves, we'll just do a quick edit. So again, if you've been here since the beginning of the edit, I mentioned that I will check the edge here of this ridge once I add some contrast and sharpening back into the image. And we'll go from there. And sorry, I should be more descriptive. When I say we'll go from there, I mean that once I check it, I might have to come back into Photoshop and fix that edge. So I think overall, this was the version we had before. Definitely more contrasty. But the blend on this one is going to look much better. So I'm going to go and start by adding some medium contrast to the image. And I think overall what I'm going to do is I definitely want to bring some of the highlights down in the whole image. But then what I'm going to do is bring up the whites just ever so slightly. We're going to crop out that bottom half just a little bit because it's got nothing really going on. And it feels a little too orange. Just a tad. So I'm just going to cool it off just a little bit. Not very much. I'm going to bring my saturation down a little bit. And I'm going to add a radial filter here in the middle. And probably darken the rest of the image really slightly. Oh, let's unselect invert. To get my viewer's eye right there on the middle a little bit more. That's probably too much. And we're getting kind of close. Again, this area is the troublesome part because if this wasn't so bright, I think overall the image would be stronger. And maybe I should go back in and darken that part of the image up in Photoshop. This is still too dark. So I think what I'm going to do is bring up the entire exposure of the whole image ever so slightly, just a little bit. I don't want to add sharpening back in yet. I'll do that last. And I just kind of definitely want to add some dehaze. I'm kind of just looking at the image and trying to decide what needs to be done to it. And you notice as I add dehaze, the bottom half of the image is getting a little bit more grungy than I want. It's removing some of that stuff I painted in earlier. So I think I'm just going to add dehaze in this, just the sky. That's going to make it look a little bit too blue. That's okay. I can fix that. I'll warm up the sky a little bit. I don't mind that part being as warm. And then I'll go to my HSL and remove a little bit of the blue. Doesn't have to be a lot. You just kind of have to massage your saturations because as you add dehaze or contrast in or anything like that, your colors are going to become more and more saturated. So I think overall, it's still a bit too dark. So I'm just going to bring up my shadows of the whole image. And I think we're pretty close. Again, I think maybe I want to go in and darken this area more to try to get it to more of a natural spot. So I'm going to come back in. Let's see, what's the best way that's going to be able to do this? Do we want to use curves adjustment or do I want to do it with my actual blend here? Let's see. I think I want to use it here. So I'm going to only have these layers on and I'm going to go back into my original blend. I'm going to turn the layer mask, luminosity mask. That looks pretty good. I'm going to make that selection. And then I'm actually going to use my pen for this. So one problem I might run into is because I removed this tree limb thing on this layer, I might have to redo that. And I might have to redo this one. But we'll see. Right now I just want to see if I can get this dark enough to my liking. Obviously that's way too much. So let's bring down this opacity to about 30%. I'll use my pen, and I just want to brush in and just darken this up. The problem is, as I darken it, it's just going to look a little muddy. And by muddy, I mean it just almost looks like unnatural because I'm darkening what should probably be pretty bright. But it's also such a distracting element in my image that trying to balance it out is going to be difficult. So we're going to try. I think just generally speaking, it just needs to be a touch darker, but not too much. I think maybe something like that could work. I need to readjust down here though. Okay. So you can see now that this layer looks off because it was sampling a brighter layer above. So all I'm going to do is come back in and, whoops, let's just fix this little spot. That looks fine. Sure. And then make sure it looks okay over here where that other limb was. The fact that I couldn't even tell where it was, oh, it's right there. Probably means it's fine. And again, the reason I had to go back and do that for that one little branch is because it was using the brighter layer before I fixed it. Okay. Now, this looks a little bit too dark, but if I really want to bring it back up, I can in Lightroom. But I think overall, this is a little bit better. I'm just seeing if there's anything else I want to do before I take it back in to Lightroom. I don't think so. Again, I think this image is decent, but I don't necessarily know if it's portfolio worthy. But I think we're almost done with the image. Let that save. Hope everyone's having a good time. Got 50 people in here. Thank you for joining. Hope you guys are enjoying. Hope everyone's having a good day. Hope the music's not too loud. There's a lot I have to hope for. Okay. Should almost be done. All right. So now that we've darkened this, again, definitely looks a little too muddy. By muddy, I mean there's these little dark spots here in the brightest parts of the image. I don't know why that happened. Maybe it was my mask. I have to imagine it was my mask. So I think what we did was too strong. So I'm going to come back in here and undo a tiny bit of what I did. Maybe even just, I don't know, maybe something like that just looks better. Just go full darkness there. Huh. I don't know. What does it look like? 100%. Okay, that looks terrible. Again, I'm just trying to remove. Okay. Just want those little spots right there to not be as dark. And I know this is like really nitpicky. It's probably hard to see on YouTube. Just trying to make sure that looks balanced. I think that looks better. How long does it take? Well, a photo like this will take a few hours sometimes. Thankfully, I think the ridgeline was actually pretty easy my second time around. But sometimes that can be very monotonous. But most of the time, a lot of my images, especially recently, I haven't spent too long in Photoshop or something working on them. Some of the photos even have just been Lightroom, and they're pretty quick and easy. But a photo like this definitely requires a little bit more time. Okay, let's see. Okay, that looks a lot better. That looks a lot more natural to my eye. There are a few little dark spots there, but it's not nearly as bad, in my opinion. So I think overall, the image is probably still a little bit too dark. But I think a lot of it's the foreground. So I think I'm going to increase my exposure by 0.25 total. And then I'm going to G&D here and just bring up the shadows a little bit in the foreground, because we're losing a little bit too much detail there, I think. And I'm going to bring the highlights down just a touch. That's probably too much. Yeah, that's good. And I think this image is almost done. This was the original edit I did, but I think this was too contrasty, too dark. Maybe it does need to just stay warm. This is something in terms of color balance I will have to come back and check with fresh eyes. But I think overall this is pretty good. If we went to 4x5, let's see what it looks like. I really don't want to cut out too much of those clouds, but I don't think I have much choice if I was doing 4x5. I think something like this works. Oh, let's check our ridgeline. Let's add some sharpness in and check what our ridgeline looks like. Let's see. Okay, ridgeline looks pretty good. Wonder if hitting this will actually help. No. It's a tiny bit. There's like a tiny little line there. But I don't think it's too bad. I think it looks pretty natural. So this is what's interesting. It's going to be hard for you guys to see on YouTube, but there's like a little white line there that happens when you add sharpness and contrast back in. That's really what you have to be careful with, because you're going to get haloing effects and stuff like that. I think overall it looks pretty good in terms of the haloing effect. So I don't know if there's anything else I really want to do with the image. I don't think... Now, I could spend more time on it trying to really push it to be something worth putting in my portfolio. But I don't think the image started off interesting enough for me to be portfolio worthy. I think our edit's pretty good. Excuse me. What do you guys think? If you've been here for the whole time, thank you for tuning in. Would love to know what you think of the final edit. Is it too dark in some places? Is it too bright in some places? Is this side too warm over here? Should I do anything else? What do you guys think? And again, a lot of these spots are dark, but they're just bright enough to be able to see the details and stuff in them, which I like. But that's pretty much that whole edit. Would love to know what you guys think. Well, either I put everyone to sleep or everyone's watching on their TV and can't chat. That's perfectly fine. Thank you, Brandon. It definitely feels, it's probably still a bit too dark. Like obviously if I boosted the shadows up, it's weird. I want to keep that contrast there, but the areas that are really dark, I don't know. I feel like it could probably be brought up just a little bit more. Of course, Gregory. Thank you, Rocky Mountain Explorer. Thank you, Anthony, for chilling. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Levi. Yeah, I think this is probably where I would end up. Again, I need to come back with fresh eyes. And the two things that coming back to the image with eyes that haven't just stared at it for 2 hours will do is tell me Do I have the colors right? Because even right now, I'm still wondering if it's a little too warm. And then the other thing it'll tell me is if it's too dark. Because I do have this light shining on my face at the moment for the stream. And typically, when I think if it's too dark on my screen, which I think it is, it's way too dark for print or for posting. So that's something I will need to adjust. The problem is, like, let's say I brought up the whole exposure of the image. That's too much. I'm still bringing up those bright areas more than I want to. So I'll have to kind of massage that a little bit. I think that maybe I might remove this out of the image in Photoshop. I don't think I want that there. But little things like that. Are you talking about the water here? The light on these rocks? Kelly? Again, I think the hardest part of the image for me, or the worst part, is trying to balance this reflection in the middle part of the image with it being so dark over here. Thank you, Mazda. You're going to have to give me a real name because I just have to keep calling you that. If you guys are just tuning in, thank you for joining. We just edited this image fully. If you happen to miss anything, it will be on my channel afterwards. I appreciate you guys joining in. This was, if I had more time, I'd probably get to another image, but I think this is probably a good stopping point in terms of editing. There's a few other images in here I think I want to take a look at, but I will save them for another time. There's one image. Let's see. Where is it? You can see how organized I am. Now, I probably have it flagged, but I'm being lazy and not looking for the flag. I think it's this image, but I don't know if it's strong enough to work on. And that's probably why I haven't worked on it. A lot of cool atmosphere. Got a foreground subject, but I don't like my composition overall because the whole right half of the frame is just a little lackluster. But we might work on that at another time. This was the image I really wanted to approach because I knew it had potential. I just didn't know if it was worth working on. I'm looking at my first edit. Sometimes I like to look at edits. So I did this one probably a year or two ago. Sometimes I like to look at those and see what I've done differently. And I definitely think I like the contrast here on my first edit more. And I feel like the tones here look a little bit better. Like this middle area is still not right for me. Something I'll have to play with. But I think that's pretty much it for this photo for today. I'm going to sit here and probably play with it a little bit more. But if you guys have any questions, if you're not subscribed, you can subscribe. Oh. It's like ASMR for your eyes. Thank you for the donation, Dead City Kid. Thank you. Oh, we hit the goal. That's sweet. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. I usually just throw a number up there because whatever. It makes me. Much appreciated. Thank you. If you guys have any questions, if you have any suggestions for next week's stream, I'm pretty much making my stream day every Wednesday in the afternoon, for my afternoon, around 4 p.m. Eastern, roughly, has been the time I've been getting on. If you have any suggestions for videos, if you have any questions, photography related, editing related, why I did something, feel free to ask. I'll hang out for a little bit longer and answer those questions. And again, if you donated, thank you so much. It's really awesome. That's all I can say. Oh, thank you, Brandon. If I could, I would try to live stream shooting photos, but most of the time I don't have service. But I think it'd be really cool if I could ever figure out a way to do that. But I think generally speaking, it's probably easier to just film the videos and then post them. But thank you. I need to get out myself. Hopefully going to Rocky Mountain National Park this weekend. Try to get a session in. Get some shots. I'm just going to keep playing with this photo while we sit here and wait. I have a few more minutes. If you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to ask. My culling process. Yeah, I think either you or someone else mentioned that another time. To be completely honest, I'll give you a quick overview. So, I mean, you could see all the shots I have here. And a lot of these are multi-exposure. Let me get out of develop. A lot of these are multiple exposures, and there's quite a few of the same stuff. So that's a bad composition. So I'll just go through and click every third photo, because that's pretty much, I was taking three exposures per photo. And I'll just click through. Sometimes I'll pick the dark exposure so I can see what the clouds are doing, and try to find which one I like in terms of the actual colors and stuff. And then all I'll do is hit pick, P. Sometimes if there's multiple, I'll just select multiple. For the most part, it's usually pretty obvious for me. So let's say I have there might be 100 photos here, but realistically there's only like 3 different compositions. And really it just matters, all that I'm looking at is how the clouds look. So for example, I didn't pick this particular photo because compare the atmosphere of the clouds here to the atmosphere of the clouds here. This is so much nicer. And that's literally how I picked this photo instead of this one. And that's pretty much how I cull. And that's what I did. I do think I took some panos here, but I generally think that I didn't pick any of these photos because the conditions in terms of the clouds wasn't as nice. But I might go in here and combine these and see what they look like. I don't think I ever did. Here's another shot, I guess, that I did of a different time. Pretty much the exact same shot. But as you can tell, the clouds were not nearly as cool as the clouds were here. So that's kind of how I cull, to be honest. Just go through, figure out which one had the best conditions, hit pick, and then I'll use the flagged thing here to go through my photos. John, that's a great point. And I don't disagree with you. I think I mentioned that I thought that El Capitan should be a little bit darker. I think the reason it's appearing so bright is because, let's say I show you this is one exposure. I think that the fog here is catching a lot of that light. So like this side is darker, is like the correct amount of darkness. But I think this side is just because of that fog that's in between the trees and El Capitan. It's catching that light and it's creating that effect. I do agree that this should be darker. I think I said that. Or at the very least, it shouldn't look as bright as it does. So if I wanted to fix that, I could go back into Photoshop really quick and I could fix that. I could also probably just throw a radio filter on here and bring down the highlights a little bit. Maybe the exposure a little bit, and then increase the contrast a little bit. And that was quick and dirty, but something like that could work. I still think it's a little too bright though, even after that. So it might be something I have to go back into Photoshop and fix. But yeah, I don't disagree with you. Thank you guys for joining in. I appreciate all support. I hope that you learned something. I know I did. Using the content aware that has the thing where I can select what it uses was fantastic. Even though I didn't actually use it in the image, absolutely will come in handy in the future, because what I used to do is duplicate the part that I wanted to content aware and then only use that layer to make the content aware. It was kind of like a roundabout way to do exactly what that was. So I learned something too. Love to see. Oh, okay. So cropping out the water. It might look okay. But I generally think that, oh, let's remove that. So if I removed all of the water, yeah, I mean, I'd have to keep some water and it would just look a little silly. Oh, I never fixed my horizon line. That's like photography editing 101. There's just better versions of this shot without, you know, definitely needed to fix the horizon line though. So glad I did that. Oh, I'm not even, you guys can't even see the photo. I did it again. So really quick, this is what it looked like without the water in it. Definitely think you have to have some kind of water or something in there. Just doesn't work without it. Well, I'm also noticing that's happening up there. That's okay though. But yeah. Andrew, I got into photography 2009, but that's kind of deceiving. It's when I bought my first camera. Didn't really start taking photography seriously until about 2012, and a lot of that was just shooting video, shooting photos, but I didn't take it that seriously in the sense that I was like making a bunch of money off of it, but I was trying to improve. I was taking photos of bands and people and stuff like that for about 2 years. Then I didn't shoot anything for a long time. And then in 2016, I basically decided I wanted to just shoot landscapes. But ever since 2016, I'll have like a year where I take a lot more photos than the next year. For example, in 2019, I barely took any photos. And it wasn't until this year when I started YouTube that I think I solidified deciding, you know, this is really what I want to do. In 2017, I took a decent amount of landscape photos. I took trips to like Iceland. And then 2018, I was in Europe for 7 weeks taking photos. And I was definitely taking a lot of photos then. But because I lived in Florida, most of the time I only took photos when I went on trips. Now I live in Colorado and I try to, I can drive to places rather than having to fly to places realistically a little bit more often. Hope that answers your question. I would say that I've taken landscape photography as like my dedicated for the last 4 years. But realistically, if you look at like the numbers of shots or how many photos I've taken in those years, I would say only about 2 full years of shooting photos. Hey, Ethan, Salt Lake was on the list, but we ended up moving here before even ever going to Salt Lake, but. We moved to Colorado basically 1 year ago. A little bit more than a year. Year and like 2 weeks. No, year and a month. Sorry. All right, guys. I'm going to wait around for, I don't know, 3 or 5 more minutes, depending on how many questions come up. And then that's going to be it for the stream. Thank you for joining in. I know there's still 40 people in here, which is impressive. Thank you for joining in, and I hope you guys learned stuff. Oh, that's cool, Gregory. I've thought about shooting real estate for money, not as like a hobby, but more of as just taking the skills that I have as a landscape photographer and shooting real estate, because that to me is probably the easiest way to monetize the skills that you will learn in landscape photography. But I think that I decided I really wanted to focus all my efforts on YouTube first, and that if I can't end up paying bills enough, that I'll do something like that. Oh, thank you, Ethan. Well, my Instagram is not the best. It's fine. Instagram for me is more of a way to communicate with people that watch my channel than it is like a dedicated portfolio. Yeah, I've shot one wedding. I'm never shooting weddings again. And that was for friends, like people I loved as friends. Way too stressful. I will never shoot a wedding. No, thank you. Could not pay me enough. Okay, cool, man. Just let me know. I don't know why, but my nose is really itchy. All right, guys. I'll give you a few more minutes. I think a lot of people tend to... I know if I was watching, I wouldn't necessarily chat. Might be watching on my TV or something like that, so... Minnesota, huh? I think I follow one photographer from that area. But I can't remember his name. But I'm pretty sure he shoots the shoreline you're talking about. Yeah, Anthony, I would love to come there during the fall. That whole area for me is never even been to. I mean, there's infinite places to go shoot photography. It's crazy. I want to go down to, is it called Shiprock in New Mexico? Shiprock? I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called Shiprock. Let me Google it. Yeah, that's it. That place looks cool. Do I have a favorite terrain in photography? No, I do not. Nope. I have no preference. I know there's some landscape photographers out there that have like they mostly shoot forest, or they mostly shoot grand mountains or something like that. I don't know. I like it all. Yeah, Anthony, I experienced my first fall foliage here in Colorado this year. I had never traveled for fall. Not once. I think it always aligned that I was either traveling in the summer or the winter. Yeah. Yeah, if you're shooting for Instagram, I don't know. That's a bit different. There's definitely a stylization and what you're shooting for Instagram that I don't really follow. Oh, sounds good, Anthony. Please do. Yeah, Ethan. I mean, that's the way people make it. I mean, even people like Peter McKinnon and stuff all have like a very specific style where their images all look the same. And I don't mean the same in terms of the subject, but just how they're editing, that kind of thing. All right, everyone. Oh, you just missed the stream, Jawad. That is going to be it for me. Thank you for tuning in. I wanted to say joining, and I said tuning, all in the same word. But thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. Next week, Wednesday, around the same time. That's pretty much the day I stream. When I do the next user submitted stream, I'll post about it, and you can find out how. Hey, Simon. Thank you for joining. Thank you for staying the whole time. Yeah, Glacier is absolutely gorgeous. I've never been, but obviously the photos, it's a photographer's dream. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you again next time. You can look out for my next video. Should be out on Sunday. And I hope you guys enjoyed. See you again soon.